Rain pounded the streets as Denise Carter's car skidded slightly on the slick asphalt. She slammed on the brakes and swerved just enough to avoid a parked SUV, her knuckles white around the wheel. The diner lights blurred through the sheets of rain, but something caught her eye, a pair of blinking hazard lights on the side of the road. She pulled over and rolled down the window. "Hello, are you okay?" she shouted over the storm. An elderly man, soaked to the bone, waved weakly. His car was dead, phone useless in the downpour. Denise hesitated. She was exhausted, had just finished a double shift, and her apartment was tiny, barely space for herself, let alone a stranger. But she couldn't ignore him. "Get in," she yelled. The man's relief was immediate, visible in the slight shake of his shoulders. Denise parked carefully, the tires splashing puddles onto the curb. Inside her small apartment, she handed him a towel. "Here, dry off. Soup's almost ready." Her own clothes clung to her, but she ignored it, pouring a steaming bowl into the only bowl she had spare. "Thank you," the man rasped, his voice weak but polite. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," Denise said, forcing a smile, "but no one deserves to be out there like that. Not in this weather." He looked around, eyes lingering on her tiny kitchen, the peeling paint, the threadbare furniture. "You're a good person," he said softly. "Most people wouldn't even stop." Denise shrugged. "I've been lucky to have help before. I just pass it on." She handed him her only blanket. "Here, keep warm." They talked quietly for a few minutes, the storm outside beating against the windows. No names, no small talk, just humanity in the middle of chaos. Before leaving, he scribbled a note and pressed it into her hand. "Thank you for seeing me as a person." The next morning, Denise raced to the diner. The storm had cleared, leaving the city slick and shiny, but her spirits were still dampened by exhaustion. She arrived slightly late, dripping wet from the leftover drizzle. Steve Harlow, the manager, spotted her instantly. "You're late," he barked. "Again, step aside." I had to help someone last night," Denise said quickly, trying to catch her breath. "An elderly man stranded in the storm. He had no phone, no way to call for help." Steve laughed, sharp and cutting. "Excuses. I don't want your charity stories here. I want a reliable employee." He gestured at the customers, who all turned to watch. "You're fired." Whispers ran through the diner. One waitress muttered, "She's the nicest one here." Denise didn't respond. She simply grabbed her apron and walked out, her head high despite the sting of humiliation. Outside, a sleek car waited. Through the rain-spattered window, she saw him, the man from last night, watching silently, her note clutched in his hand. Denise didn't know it yet, but this quiet figure would turn her world upside down. Inside, Steve slammed the cash register shut and muttered under his breath, "Good riddance. Charity cases never belong in my diner." Henry Weston, the diner owner, stepped into the establishment later that day. His presence demanded attention. Staff straightened automatically, fear and respect mingling in their expressions. He walked calmly to the counter and asked, "Where is Denise Carter?" "She was late," Steve said quickly. "I fired her." The cook, a stocky man with flour on his hands, shook his head. "That's not true. Denise is one of the hardest workers here. She covers shifts, trains new employees. You know it." Another waitress chimed in. "She's kind, reliable. You can't just fire her like that." Weston's gaze shifted between Steve and the staff. "Call her back. Now." Denise returned cautiously, wet hair plastered to her forehead, unsure what was happening. Weston addressed the diner, his voice calm but firm. "This woman helped me last night when no one else would. She didn't ask for anything. She just saw a person in need." Steve froze. "Wait. What?" "She will return to her position," Weston continued, "and effective immediately, she is co-manager. Her example of integrity and kindness sets the standard for this diner. The staff gasped. Denise blinked, stunned. Steve's face drained of color, disbelief written across every feature. "Don't worry about it," Weston said quietly, almost to himself. "She's exactly what this diner needs." Denise felt a mix of shock, relief, and excitement. She stepped forward, voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." Weston gave a small nod, and she felt it, the tide of her life shifting. Under Denise's leadership, the diner began to feel alive in a way it hadn't before. Laughter replaced the nervous murmurs among the staff, and customers lingered longer, enjoying the warmth Denise cultivated. She moved between tables, checking on orders, praising small victories, and calming frayed nerves. Every action seemed to ripple through the diner, lifting the mood. Steve Harlow, no longer manager but a regular server, leaned against a counter and scowled. "This place is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath. "How can she run it all by herself?" Denise noticed a small discrepancy while counting the day's cash. $20 were missing, her brow furrowed. This was unusual, too precise to be accidental. "Tom, did you take this out?" she asked, holding up the register tape. "Nope," the cook replied, shaking his head. "I didn't touch it." Denise nodded, forcing calm into her voice. "All right, thanks." But inside, a quiet unease settled. Something felt off, and she couldn't ignore it. The next day, more small amounts vanished. $50, $30, each time she stepped away from the register for just a few minutes. Someone was deliberately testing her. She refused to confront anyone without proof, yet her instincts screamed that Steve might be involved. Later, she approached Weston privately. "Sir, I've noticed repeated shortages from the register," she said. "It's not large, but it's suspicious and consistent." Weston listened, brows furrowed. "Do you suspect someone?" Denise hesitated. "I don't want to make false accusations, but I can't ignore the pattern." Weston nodded decisively. "I trust your judgment. We'll handle this carefully and fairly." A private investigator was brought in, and discreet cameras were installed throughout the diner. For Denise, the tension never left her shoulders. Steve's glares grew colder, his silence heavier, and every misstep felt like a challenge. Within days, the evidence became undeniable. Steve Harlow, under the cover of lunch hour, was caught slipping money from Denise's register into his apron. The investigator recorded every moment, leaving no room for denial. Weston gathered the staff the following morning. The footage played on a small monitor, the room silent except for the occasional gasp. Steve's face drained of color as all eyes bore into him. "This is theft," Weston said, his tone unyielding. "And it's a betrayal of trust. Denise Carter has managed this diner with honesty and dedication. You chose deception instead." Steve's voice cracked with panic. "This is impossible. She's lying. I didn't—" An officer stepped forward, holding cuffs. "Sir, we have irrefutable evidence. You are under arrest for theft." Denise remained calm, her expression composed. She didn't need to speak. The truth had spoken for her. Weston gave a subtle nod, acknowledging her poise and judgment under pressure. Outside, Steve was led away, his protests fading into the distance. The staff whispered relief, some exchanging smiles, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Denise returned to her duties, letting the events settle naturally into the flow of the diner. Weeks later, the diner had transformed completely. Denise introduced morning huddles, staff recognition programs, and small competitions to encourage collaboration and kindness. The atmosphere became electric with positivity. Customers commented frequently on how welcoming it felt, and tips increased noticeably. Weston often appeared during these times, leaning casually against counters or observing quietly from a corner. "You've changed this place," he said one afternoon, watching Denise interact with the staff. "Not just the operations, but the energy, the way people feel when they come in." Denise smiled, a mixture of pride and humility. "I just try to do the right thing," she said. "Right now, that's contagious," Weston replied. "You've shown that leadership is more than authority. It's example, kindness, and integrity." As Denise closed the diner one evening, she reflected on that stormy night when she had helped a stranger, giving him warmth and a blanket without expectation. She never imagined how that simple act would spiral into a complete transformation of her life. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Steve, wearing a worn jacket and scrubbing the windshield of a nearby car, looked up, uncertain. Denise walked over slowly, holding an envelope. "This is for you," she said, handing it to him. He stared. "Me? Why?" Inside was a donation made to charity in his name, and a short note. "Everyone deserves a second chance. I had mine." Steve didn't know how to respond. Denise didn't wait for him to speak. She turned and walked back into the diner, unlocking the doors and signaling a new beginning for the day. The rainy day diner opened to sunlight streaming through the windows, staff smiling, ready to welcome the first customers. Denise took a deep breath, standing behind the counter. Every decision, every act of kindness had led to this. The diner was more than food. It was a place of integrity, hope, and community. Weston appeared in the doorway, leaning lightly against the frame. "You've created something special," he said. "It's not just the diner. It's everything inside it." Denise nodded, smiling. "And it all started with one choice, a single act of kindness. If you're loving this story, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below how you think Denise handled everything. Don't miss the final twist. It's going to blow your mind." The next morning, the rainy day diner opened its doors to golden sunlight streaming across the street. Denise stood behind the counter, apron tied neatly, watching the staff move efficiently. The place hummed with energy, customers chatting, laughter floating through the air, tips clinking in registers. Weston appeared, leaning casually in the doorway. "How's everything?" he asked. "Better than I imagined," Denise replied. "The staff is motivated, the customers are happy, and everything is running smoothly." "You've transformed this diner," Weston said, his gaze softening. "Not just the business, but the people. Integrity and compassion are now the foundation here." Denise smiled. "I didn't do it alone. The team stepped up, every single one of them." Weston nodded. "Leadership starts with example, and you've set it perfectly." Later, a delivery man arrived with a package addressed to Denise. Inside was a note from Weston. "Your kindness started it all. You are now not just co-manager, you are a partner. Congratulations." Denise read it aloud to her team. "We did this together," she said, "and we're only getting started." Outside, Steve Harlow scrubbed a windshield, his face showing signs of humility. Denise approached, holding an envelope. "For you," she said calmly. "Me? Why?" he asked, wary. Inside was a donation to charity in his name and a note. "Everyone deserves a second chance. I had mine." Steve hesitated, then nodded slowly. Denise didn't wait for a response. She turned back inside, unlocking the doors and letting sunlight flood the diner. The staff greeted her with smiles, energized for the day ahead. Denise moved confidently among them, checking orders and sharing encouragement. Every decision reinforced the culture of respect and integrity she had built. Weston watched from the doorway. "You're the heart behind this diner's transformation," he said quietly. Denise reflected on that stormy night, the man stranded in the rain, the simple choice to help him. That single act had sparked a chain reaction, firing, betrayal, triumph, and now renewal. Later, a local news crew arrived to cover the story of the Rainy Day Diner. Denise greeted them warmly, showing moments of her assisting customers, praising staff, and even guiding Steve with small tasks outside. Speaking directly to the camera, she said, "Kindness matters. Integrity matters. One decision to do the right thing, even when it's hard, can change not only your life but the lives of everyone around you." The diner's day continued with energy, laughter, and hope. Denise closed the doors briefly to reflect, watching sunlight dance on the puddles left from rain. She knew the journey had been about more than running a diner. It was about integrity, compassion, and the choices that define a life. The Rainy Day Diner was no longer just a place to eat. It had become a symbol of hope, justice, and the transformative power of kindness. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more stories.